In this video, Bartek's going to lay out for us 7 tips on how to deal with this isolation. He's been doing his research and bringing his own experience. And please stick around with us till the end, because we have a bonus one for you right at the end where we'll really delve right into it. Hello and welcome to another Integrated Skills podcast. I am joined yet again by my great friend and colleague Bartek Barry Nauruk, all the way from Bangkok in Thailand. How are things with your good self, my dear friend?
All good, Fergus, thanks. Yeah, so like you said, we are back in Bangkok. Total lockdown, so it's not the best place to be, but we're doing the best we can. Thank God it's been raining a lot and it's greener than ever. So when you go for a walk along the canal, and we are pretty close to some lovely canals, it's fantastic. You go for a walk in the morning and it's like a proper jungle. Yeah. What about yourself, Fergus? How are you?
Yeah, everything's great here in Nova Scotia in Canada. We're in the middle of summer, so playing a lot of tennis. It's nice, beautiful weather here as well. So I'm getting outside, playing a good bit of sport these days. So, and all of that makes me think, it's a good connection to what we're going to talk about today. So in the last podcast, you mentioned that you were going to join us again to talk about, ways of dealing with, the isolation that comes along with this online world that we find ourselves in, and like, while the online world is more than serving a purpose, it's like keeping the whole thing afloat. Definitely all of us, especially this amount of time in, we're over a year since all of this, the world changed basically.
Long time.
And we're over a year and a half in now, and a lot of us, whether we be students or teachers or trainee teachers or any professional, or not even any person, while it's great that we're able to keep in contact, there is this kind of isolation. So in this video, Bartek's going to lay out for us 7 tips on how to deal with this isolation. He's been doing his research and bringing his own experience. And please stick around with us till the end, because we have a bonus one for you right at the end where we'll really delve right into it. So Bartek, what tips do you have? Get us started.
I mean, yeah, it's a tough topic, of course, for all, because it's been hugely challenging on top of doing a normal work. I've been doing a little bit of research, mainly, to be honest, just talking to friends, colleagues, and how they deal with this. What's their advice? Because it's all about, talking about how you feel, right? And then you can come up with suggestions and tips. I think it's the best thing to do. I've done a little bit of reading, but to be honest with you, I haven't come across anything substantial with regards to actually teachers' isolation. And tips on that. People talk about how students feel isolated, and that they need more social interaction. But I think the topic of teachers' isolation is a little neglected.
I can kind of understand that in a way, because like it's new territory, and so like and I think you've obviously found out a lot for our discussion today, but I think there's a lot that can be derived from our experience as well. So I'd really like to ask, just before you get into it, anybody who's watching this, how are you dealing with the isolation? What tips have you come up with? Let us know in the comments below, because along with everything that we're going to lay out there, and Bartek has tested a lot of these things, and so have I, but we'd really like to add to this pool of knowledge, because it's really a burgeoning field, right? It's really new, and it's something that we could all really, I guess, gain from sharing the knowledge. But Bartek, go ahead. What was the first one that you were going to take us through today?
Right. So actually, the first two are kind of obvious, and I'm sure many institutions and establishments do this on a regular basis because it's kind of, it's just common sense, I guess. But very briefly, I'm going to touch on those. So, no matter what organization you work for, I think those you definitely need weekly meetings, and I'm going to talk about two types. So the first type is weekly meetings for the whole faculty, just talking about admin, a bit of gossip, few stories, an opportunity to go into breakout rooms where you share those top activities, top ideas that have worked in this particular week, and also an opportunity to get things off your chest, what issues you've had. It's all about victories and issues. I think it's about the right balance. But if you work for a big organization, those meetings can get a little long, and for some individuals, they may not be as productive and constructive as one would wish. So on top of that, I think it would be good to set up and arrange smaller meetings, so let's say, level meetings. So if you have a smaller group, 2 to 4 teachers that teach from the same book, and they have an opportunity for a meeting once per week, half an hour, 1 hour, but it's more intimate, it's more private, the boss is maybe not there, so you can talk about you're more kind of inclined to say whatever you want. And I think both of those two types are important. And obviously, I think they have to be supported by the management. And this is kind of something that we're doing in my school, and it's working.
Yeah, this is something that, I've talked to quite a lot of people about what you're mentioning as well, and especially getting into smaller groups, I think is key. I was speaking with my sister about this recently, and she was on a meeting in the organization that she works at, and there was, she works for a very large organization, and there was hundreds of people on the call, hundreds. It might have been into the thousands. So in that kind of situation, like if anybody who has walked down an avenue or a street in a really large city, you can be surrounded by millions of people, but you can feel totally alone, right? And I think the same in a situation like that. If you're in a huge Zoom call, okay, you might be getting news from the organization, but like you don't feel any opportunity to speak. Whereas, look at what's going on between you and I at the moment. It's just the two of us. So like there's ample opportunity to share ideas.
Yeah.
And the other thing I just said about your first idea about having a whole team meeting, in a kind of like a reasonable number of people, but having a whole team meeting, I see a lot of value in that as well, because if it's super valuable to be in your group and your level group that you're teaching or whatever it is, and the people are doing the same work as you, but it's also extremely valuable to have a conversation with the people who are not doing the same work as you, because the kind of natural human tendencies of commiserating or empathizing, or I don't know really anything about what you're talking about, but I'll ask some questions, because we're us humans, we're curious beings,
Absolutely.
So it taps into all of that. And one thing that occurred to me is it also promotes this. Now, this is really going to sound like one of those motivational kind of corporate posters that you see, but there's a truism here, which is outside of the box thinking. So if you're talking with somebody who is not exactly doing the same work as you, well, they can see it from afar. They can see the problem that you're, and maybe they might have a novel approach, a new way of thinking about it, that, when you're so close to something, you can't really see it. But if you're looking at it with new eyes or fresh eyes. So yeah, I think that those are really, really two great ideas, that whole group meeting, and then the smaller one focused on the people that are doing the same work as you. So Take us through another few, Bartek. You've got off to you're off to a flyer. I'm loving these ideas so far. So what else have you got for us this week?
Yeah, so obviously the first two, the first one is quite formal, but it still should be semi-formal. The second one, small groups, it's obviously a lot more relaxed. But I think there should be more informal meetings. So I have come up with two ideas. And I think Friday is a good day for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
Wait a minute, Fergus, is it Friday yet?
it's well, it's getting there. It's getting there.
It's getting there. Anyway, Friday is a good day, right? Obviously. So the meeting would be, TGIF or Happy Friday. Obviously, it wouldn't be mandatory. So it all depends how close you are with your colleagues. But I'm thinking of, something short, 15 to 20 minutes. And, supported by some visuals to actually encourage people to participate. And I don't know, you throw a question, fancy a cold one, and, listen to some music, set up the meeting at 4 or 4:30, have a bit of a laugh, have one or two drinks and, finish it whenever you're ready, so no obligations.
Yeah, let your hair down, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
Just talking for the sake of talking, right? It's one of our... Again, I keep bringing things back to, really human thoughts and feelings as well, because throughout all of this time, that's something that I've reflected on a lot, like what it really means to be a person in the world. And, because we've changed things so much, and just, sometimes we talk, and this relates to teaching as well, when we talk about like a reading text, okay, is it, you talk about the genre, is it an article? Is it a report? Yada, yada, yada. The same with speaking, you can broadly define speaking as, interactional or transactional, or other ways of looking at speaking is like, and, excuse my French here. One of them is shooting the shit, like just talking for the sake of talking, We
all need it.
We really need it. There's plenty of it. Like there's this type of talking on a podcast, talking about educational ideas. There's presentations. There's doing an interview. There's speaking to your taxi driver. There's all of these are different genres of speaking, but that one that I mentioned, just talking for the sake of talking, it's one that has really, I guess, suffered a lot. Having those just social conversations, that we took for granted our whole lives before, and now we need to make an effort to keep them alive. And this, thank God it's Friday, TGIF idea that you bring here of just, crack a beer, or
I feel like having one now, but I can't.
I think it's a great idea. Like, and it's just needed. It's still not quite the real life equivalent, but it's needed. Wonderful. I love it, Bartek. Let's keep going. So TGIF, what else have you got for us?
Yeah, one last one. So, TGIF, that could be done every 2 weeks or something. I mean, depending on the interest. But one more, and that could be done maybe once per month or even less frequently, entirely up to individuals that are part of the team. It's all about belonging, being part of a community, but something totally different. And here it comes. I have a talent session. Maybe not on a Friday, maybe on a Thursday towards the end of the week, and obviously, again, it wouldn't be mandatory, and people could just take turns in talking about their passions, their interests. I don't know, maybe you're a musician. I mean, like you, Fergus, you play your favorite tune for 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. I love dancing, especially on Fridays after having one drink.
Oh, I know. I've seen the Barty moves plenty of times.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's just something silly, but yet different, you know? It's Friday!
Yeah, no,
and I think it's all about, opening up, and something similar could be used with the students. Imagine though, really focusing on what they love, doing a session, I have a talent on a Friday, to break away from the curriculum and just, obviously it's extremely student centered, and students would love it, I think.
Bartek, I was just speaking recently, just today, in fact, earlier today, with a trainee teacher about the idea of different types of feedback. I was talking about there's linguistic feedback and there's content feedback. Linguistic, obviously focused on language systems, so your grammar, your lexis, your functions, your pronunciation. But then the content feedback, basically responding to what the learner actually said, and it was actually a conversation that was revolving around error correction, that you shouldn't correct a student's grammar when they're giving you the answer to a listening question, for example, because you're kind of like robbing their success from them in a way, but, staying with the content side of things, sometimes we can get really caught up in what are we doing as teachers, and we're teaching this grammar and teaching this sub-skill and yada, yada, yada. And we forget why the learner is taking that class in the first place. They're taking that class because they want to use the language in the real world, to make relationships, to do their job, to do all the things that you and I do on a daily basis using this language. That's the point is not to get the correct answers in the gap fill. The point is not to even score that 8 or 9 in an IELTS. There's something after that. The thing that's after that is using it in the real world. And I love what you say there about it's, just we can do this with our students as well. Hey, what's going on with you? And not so much worried about doing our correction spot or just setting up the task. Just, hey, what's going on?
Having fun. Yeah. Having fun on Friday. Everybody needs it, they have heavy schedules as well, big timetables. So Friday should be, and we really should think about it when it comes to planning. It's not always possible, not always feasible, but it should definitely feature and into our thinking and planning, and we should consider this.
Amazing. And I love it. Applies to students, it applies to trainees, it applies to teachers, it applies to humans. That's what unites us all. We put ourselves into these categories, but forget the categories. We're just, we're people. And that's why I think it's such, I love these. I love when a tip or a piece of advice is simple, because it's so applicable and it's so, it's memorable, it's real, and you can just intuitively understand the truth behind it. Love it. Great one. Okay, I think you got another few up your sleeve for us, Bartek. I don't think you're done yet.
There was an article I read just recently. I think it was yesterday actually. And I'm not gonna talk in too much detail, but I thought it was fascinating, and it kind of contradicts what we've been talking about in a way, or it might. Contradicts, just sheds a different light on the whole conversation. And the article was about the elderly and how they've been dealing with isolation. And of course, they've embraced the idea of Zooming. Those who had access to the internet and could use the devices. And shockingly, actually, and surprisingly enough, the research suggests that those who have been using those platforms actually had a bigger sense of isolation. And everybody was actually astounded and shocked, as I said before. The reason was that they simply found familiarizing themselves with technology stressful. And, well, it's kind of, you start asking big questions, I mean, we're human beings at the end of the day. We've been deprived for all this time of proper social interaction. And of course, it can't be replaced by Zoom, can it? So, let's not forget who we really are, right? I think this is where we are heading towards.
Yeah, and this is, probably going to tug at my heartstrings a little bit now. This is actually, okay, let's jump into the Fergus bonus one, maybe a little bit early. My thought on this was, and I want to keep focusing on these things that we can do in the online world to basically keep things alive until all of this is over. But one tip that I came up with that I, added to our list of things to talk about today was maybe we could spend a little bit of time in a kind of like a nostalgia world, because there's benefit to nostalgia, and talk about what we'll do when, I can clink my glass against your glass and say cheers, and like have a drink there and then, and when I can, embrace you and like, be in the same room and not only living in this online world.
I need that big bad boy hug, Fergus.
Oh, I know. I like, believe you me. And like we are in the world and various places begin to emerge from all of this. But I think, it might be a little bit eggshellsy, but we have to be a little bit brave. I think something that we could include here is talking about just like what you said, I need that big hug, talking about what we'll do when we get back into the classroom, when we get back into the real world, to remember the things that we loved before the world of Zoom, and remember the things that we'll rekindle when we get out of this world. It reminds me, and, bear with me for this for a second. It reminds me of a movie by an Irish director, Neil Jordan. I could be wrong about his name, but it's an Irish director called Interview with a Vampire. It's a very famous movie. Well, in the 90s, it was famous. Maybe not everyone. I'm just kind of dating myself a little bit. Everybody, you should check it out. Interview with a Vampire was with Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, and Kirsten Dunst. And in that movie, I promise this is going somewhere. This is going to what we're talking about. In that movie, Brad Pitt was this like ancient vampire, and he met Tom Cruise was this ancient vampire, and he met Brad Pitt into a vampire. And when Brad Pitt became a vampire, he remembered his humanity, and he didn't want to kind of do all the things that vampires have to do, basically, like, kill people. And then Tom Cruise said to him, well, if you're going to be such a scaredy cat about it, you can survive by like eating rats and rabbits and things like that, but you'll be miserable. You'll hate it. And Brad Pitt, he did this for a couple of 100 years, but his stomach was always rumbling, and eventually he gave in to his vampire ways, and he was very happy. Now, the whole point here of what I'm saying is that like Zoom is kind of like that it's filling the gap, you know, and these ideas, they're filling the gap, but like we have a greater need, you know. And if I could just reference one more thing, I was listening recently. I was watching a talk by a psychologist on YouTube recently, and he was talking about this point as well, about why some people deal better with the isolation of being on Zoom and not. And what he was talking about, if you think about like what we are as humans physiologically, so there is a computer here, it's a real object, and the light is bouncing off it, and it's going into these little holes behind these, fleshy lenses, and then that's doing something in my brain, and it's turning it into an image, and I can see you. You know, that's a kind of a very poor attempt at a scientific description of vision. But also, Bartek, have you ever had the feeling that somebody is watching you?
Well, yeah.
Have you ever had the feeling that there's eyes on you? You know, when you were a kid in school, that your teacher is watching you? Or have you ever had the feeling that, like, you know, you're in a conversation with a great friend and you can tell that they're really, really into it, not just by their head is in your direction and their eyes, but like there's something more. And this psychologist, he was saying, in a way, you're now this is getting like really kind of to the limits of what we could say is tangible. You know, call it a spirit, call it a energy, call it what you will. There's a part of you when you look at a person that kind of like jumps out of you and kind of like touches without like physically touching the other person, you know. And while I see the video of you on my screen, and
not
you know,
sometimes, no?
Yeah, there's something more that's needed. Right? You know, this is great, like Brad Pitt in the movie, this is keeping us alive, you know. But there's something more that's needed. And I guess where I'm going with all of this is, I think, lest we not forget that. We shouldn't forget, and also kind of like what I was saying earlier about, you know, the student who's studying for IELTS. The point isn't just to get that great mark in IELTS, it's to get that great mark in IELTS and then. The point isn't just to survive in the matrix, it isn't just to survive in Zoom. The point is use Zoom to survive, but the point is what we do afterwards. And like
carry on living.
Yeah. So that's why I think both of these things are necessary. Like, I love all of the ideas that you brought, like about our weekly meeting, our focused meetings, or the way that you had ideas about bringing fun with the thank goodness or thank God it's Friday. I have a talent. I see a few others that you had there about maybe doing a pub quiz and
all right,
all of these kinds of ideas as well. They're absolutely essential, and thank goodness that there's creative people such as yourself bringing this to the masses, bringing this to everybody who's watching. And again, I'll just reiterate it: if you're watching this, please, if you have any other ideas which work for kind of like mitigating this isolation that we all feel, and this difficult period that we're all in, please do drop a comment below, share the wealth, share the love. But I think and I'll finish with this, and I'll hand it over to you. I'm reminded of an Oscar Wilde quote. Oscar Wilde once said that some of us are in the what do you call it? In the gutter, in the drain. We're in the dirty part of the street. But at least if we're in the gutter, we're looking up at the stars.
I like that one. Yeah, being optimistic about what you've got. I mean, accepting where you are and still being positive. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, listen, Fergus, thanks for the insights. That was amazing, actually. Yeah, I think it's important to bear all this in mind. And you know what? Do you know how I'm going to finish, Fergus? I'm looking forward to dancing my socks off when, when we can go dancing again.
Well, absolutely. Well, Bartek, look at, this has been another really wonderful conversation. A lot of great ideas that you've brought to the table. I hope that everybody watching this gets a lot from it, starts to incorporate them, and I guess you'll join us again next week for the next installment in our integrated skills podcast. And this time we're going to move on from the topic of rapport and isolation, and we'll have a new topic for everybody next week. So please do join us next week. And Bartek, I'll just leave it to you to sign us off. Thank you so much for today, and yes, over to you.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. All the best, and looking forward to the next one. Thanks, Fergus.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.